since we are talking about the experience economy as our theme this year at China Connect, I figured I would bring the social part of it to the things that we show you guys. So why I feel like I'm qualified to do this. So I've been running Wear Social in China for 5 years now. And people ask me, well, where are you based? And I technically live in Shanghai, but really I live in these airports. Because now I manage over 120 people across Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong, and our very newly minted Tokyo office. So that's not really China, but it's close. So yeah, I feel like every year I want to bring something new. So this year, if you guys were here last year, don't worry, it's not the same presentation. I actually put some work in and made a new one. And I also noticed, you guys have been watching a lot of videos and kind of looking at a lot of data. So I intentionally left out both videos and data. So anyway. All right, first I wanted to start off, before we talk about social, I want to sort of reiterate why we're all here, and it's for a business purpose, right? It's to better understand the China market and how we could be more efficient in operating in that market as marketers. So one of the things I want to point out is the complexity of the Chinese path to purchase. And why is it complex? On the surface, it's like, well, Chinese consumers are just consumers, so why would they be any more complex? And a lot of us would think, all right, let's just take, and this is not any particular conversion funnel, just something I found on the internet. But it's like, yeah, let's apply the same philosophies that we apply elsewhere in the world. Use a conversion funnel, and then you drive people from awareness all the way to action, and then you have your customers. This is much harder in China because we've had a history of bad luck, I guess, as consumers in China. So because the economy grew so fast, and there were so many people who unscrupulously were trying to take advantage of the fast growth. So we ended up with a lot of scandals and a lot of issues and a lot of very dangerous problems, right? So the consumers are now scarred by the whole experience of being in that economy for the past 10, 20 years, right? I'm not going to name every single scandal, but essentially, as Chinese consumers, we now doubt anything you say as a marketer, right? So if you say you have high quality, we're like, I don't know. If you say, no, this really has high efficacy, we're like, no, I don't know. You can even say, hey, I am selling you authentic branded products, and there's going to be even skepticism about that, right? So these are the extra things that you have to overcome when you talk about converting a Chinese consumer into your customer base. So I want to then give you this story. Do you guys know what this is? Yeah, I didn't really know either, and it just magically showed up at my doorstep one morning. And I was like, so my fiance's name is Jen, right? So I'm like, Jen, why is there a Philips air fryer on our doorstep? And she's like, oh, Amber recommended that we buy one. So Amber's like her best friend. And Amber recommended we buy one yesterday. And I was like, Jen, we weren't on the market for an air fryer, so why do we buy one? And she's like, well, she says it could cook all these amazing foods. And I'm like, well, we don't even like fried foods. And she's like, yeah, but maybe we'll start liking fried foods now that we have this. We could fry something every day. And guess what? It actually, after its arrival, we used it once to try to make French fries. We did terribly. It turned out to be more like mashed potatoes. So now it just sits in the corner collecting dust. So why do I bring this up? Is because this whole thing, right, bypassed the entire conversion funnel. There was no awareness, there was no preference, there was no desire. It was just one WeChat message from Amber, who lives in another city, who says, hey, I just bought this thing and it's pretty cool, you guys should buy one too. Boom. Overthrew the entire conversion funnel. So what I want to bring to you today is the idea of recommendations. And I think this is something that we overlook as marketers, especially from the outside looking in. Oftentimes we think, we can mechanically and methodically approach the Chinese market. But a lot of times we overlook the importance of getting a real customer base that is in favor of your brand and your product, who is going to advocate your brand and product for free. And it results in things like this, which is, I think, a much higher form of marketing than just practicing your usual conversion funnel, because that's what all your competitors are going to be doing. Okay, so now we talk about WeChat. So I know that before lunch, Sky from Tencent had his presentation, and I'll be damned if I follow up the Tencent guy with more WeChat data, so I'm not going to show you any WeChat data. Instead, I'm going to kind of tell you the importance of WeChat through another perspective. So again, this is going back to my fiance Jen. So when I met her in 2011, it was in a bar. I know, very typical. So I started chatting her up, and I was with a friend, and then after I got through my conversation with her, went back to my friend, and this was 2011. So my friend asked me, "Did you get her digits?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, dude, I got her digits." And so anyway, so now she's engaged to me. But that was 2011, and you actually don't do that anymore. So nowadays, if you, and I'm not on the market anymore, but this is more for you single guys and gals, all right? But yeah, so if you're in Beijing, Shanghai, chatting up someone, and you're like, "Hey, I really like this person." So for the guys first, right? Meet a Chinese girl, and you don't say, "Can I buy you dinner? Can I get your phone number?" That's like a big, that's weird, right? It's like, "Can I get your phone number?" No, what you say is this: 美女，加我微信吧. Right? So that just says, "Beautiful girl, add my WeChat." All right, so all the guys, now it's an exercise. Let's get a bit interactive. You want to say it one more time? You repeat after me. 美女，加我微信吧. Very good. All right, now not to be ignorant of the single ladies here. So if you meet a handsome young man, this is what you say: 帅哥，加我微信吧. Ladies. Very good. All right, give yourself a hand. Okay, so this is where we're at. It's like, you know, what we thought was going to be a long-standing norm in the practice of getting phone numbers of strangers. You don't do that anymore, at least not in China. Now you just ask for WeChat. And yeah, if the person likes you, they'll give you the WeChat, or they'll find some weird excuse. But I mean, you know, I think if the person says, "I don't have WeChat," that doesn't even sound like an excuse anymore. That just sounds like this person is like really, really weird, and you should run as fast as you can away from this person, right? Because, yeah, just not having WeChat is just like an unacceptable concept anymore. All right, so again, I didn't bring any data, and this is not clickbait. This is just something I found that I thought was quite valuable, and it's very fresh. So essentially, it's like a collection of different data points that talks about WeChat and its importance. And so, yeah, if you guys want, you could go ahead and scan it now and bookmark it. That saves me the trouble of having to labor through a lot of data points. Okay, I'll give you 3 more seconds. 2, 1. Okay. All right, so I get this a lot, right? Now, we are called We're Social, so, you know, anytime you search like marketing to China using social media, or any combination of those keywords, we do come up. And so in our new business inbox, we get things like this all the time, which is, you know, random companies out of Europe or out of Africa or out of Russia writing us saying, "Can your company help me sell my products on WeChat?" And there would be some elaboration, like, "We hear WeChat is used by a lot of people in China," right? The last one I just threw in there for laughs. That's got nothing to do with today's main topic. But a lot of times they throw in this line, which is, "Please give me the cheapest quotation possible." Now, if you're here as a brand, guys, us on the agency side, we throw emails like that away immediately. It's like, you tell me to give you the cheapest quotation possible. What then? So I'm doing this as a charity, or what are we doing? So that's just a small tip for all the brand managers out there. I see some uncomfortable faces, so I guess some people have been guilty of that in this room. Stop it. Okay, so now why is that first part really funny to me though? Is because from the outside you're like, oh, I'm just going to use WeChat. But if you open the hood, there's like a ton of stuff that you can do on the app, and it gets confusing, and prioritization starts becoming unclear, and you don't really know exactly what to focus on. A lot of people think, content creation is important on WeChat, and it's got its unique form of content creation. The long format, sort of like a magazine type of posting, and with certain time restrictions and things like that. I mean, all these things are quite quirky, but that shouldn't be the only thing you focus on, right? So today, I hope to drive home the point that you ought to take a step back and think about what you really want to do. And I argue that getting that personal recommendation from your customer base is more important than any of these things. So for the purpose of this presentation, I paid my own pocket money to run a survey, and really just to get some data that you guys could go home with. So essentially, out of all these things, I wanted to figure out from a very comfortable survey base of 100 people, what type of recommendation drove you to buy something in the past 60 days? So it's kind of got like a WeChat focus to this question. It's a one-question survey, right? And the responses I got were these. So 30% private message. That means like how my Philips air fryer arrived at my door. It was that. It was one private message, and boom, I'm a proud new owner of an air fryer. And then 12% of moments postings by friends. 9% of some recommendations or some mention in group chats. If you guys work with Chinese people at all, you'll know that we live and breathe group chats 24/7. Because I mean, there's a group chat for everything, and sometimes there are subgroup chats to talk about the other group chat. So, it takes up a lot of our time, right? Surprisingly, public accounts, which includes KOLs, 3%. Right? So this is not to say that KOLs are ineffective, but as we all know, the influencer economy has arrived and is sort of still playing itself out. So you can use a KOL, but so can anybody else. And so the effectiveness is sort of capped at a very low ceiling, right? And I'm not surprised to see that 3% mark for public accounts, which also means a lot of the effort that goes into WeChat marketing, which then renders content for public accounts, is also capped at that rate of effectiveness. So yeah, next time you think of pressuring your agency to make one of your WeChat posts go viral, I mean, at the end of the day, is it really going to drive sales? My argument is that it'll only drive 3%. Sorry to whoever else is from Tencent, but Moments ads rendered no conversions. I'm not saying Moments ads are useless. I'm not saying don't buy Moments ads, but I think for the purpose of driving recommendations, I think it's actually pretty far out there as far as the tool sets that we need to keep within reach. So let's focus on this one bit more. You add all those numbers up. If you're very good at math, you'll see that 46% were missing. And that's because the 46% were from offline recommendations. Where do offline recommendations come from? Well, they come from personal preference and personal opinions, right? So I argue that we actually should be spending a lot more time shaping these personal opinions and personal preferences. So I don't have a case study for that because I tried to use case studies in the previous years, and it's like every time I show a case study, someone will come to me and tell me that my case study didn't address their category. So I'm just saying, look, if you really want me to look at your specific business problem, we could talk afterwards, but today we're just gonna keep it more or less theoretical and really just get your thinking hats on. So 46%. And if you put that together with the other 30% that were driven by private messaging, that's a whopping 76% of sales decisions that were made by personal recommendations, right? Whether through WeChat or offline. And so this goes back to the goes back to the entire marketing strategy of any brand or any product. Are you really just serving up ads, or are you designing an entire experience that goes back all the way to your product design? Because I think, using the case of the air fryer again, if our friend Amber didn't have an easy time turning it on and actually making something edible with that device, then she would not have recommended it. So that part of it is actually a lot more to do with product design than to do with marketing. So when you're trying to launch in China, then you have to think, all right, from a consumer journey perspective, from a usability perspective, am I addressing all these things? Instead of really just going in with a wad of cash and saying, hey, agency XYZ, market my product for me. I think that is not an efficient use of your money. All right, so that's the WeChat part of it, and you guys would say, well, you know, you being the We're Social guy can't just be about WeChat all the time, right? And okay, yeah, we do think about other things. So there's Weibo, which gives me a little bit of time for another story. So we were approached by the new Beijing airport not too long ago. How many people knows that Beijing is getting a new airport? Wow, you guys are in the know. Because I only found out when I got the RFP. I was like, what? New airport? So anyway, yeah, Beijing's getting a new airport. And so this is like a few months ago. And we're like, well, you're a new airport. You probably need a homegrown, like true Beijingren to be spokesperson of that airport, right? And so we went down the list and we're like, you know, Wu Xiaobo, tier 1 actor, you know, in all these movies and TV shows. And homegrown Beijinger. So he should be on the top of our recommendations. Now, luckily the news broke soon after, and he, before we actually pitched, so we had the chance to change our pitch deck. But yeah, he because of Weibo, he ran into a huge PR problem. And what is a huge PR problem? Is that besides his wife, he also had a girlfriend. And so and somehow the girlfriend became problematic, and so to get rid of this problem, he sort of told her to come back to China and they'll solve their problems. And then when she got to China, then he got in touch with the police and got her arrested. So this became a huge story on Weibo, right? Why am I telling you this? Is because we use Weibo for a couple of things. We use Weibo to subscribe to the stories of the celebrities in China. And two, it just keeps us entertained at a very fast pace, right? So things like this then just quickly spreads. It doesn't really help brands at all, but it does a lot of disservice for the brands that were assigned to Wu Xiaobo. So this is basically on Weibo, people start posting like his girlfriend's lavish life overseas, and how, you know, perhaps she was being too demanding on him. So all this put together, though, Weibo takes up 8 minutes of our attention span every day, and so this is very small compared to WeChat. But at the same time, if you look at things like this story, which essentially took down an A-list actor, it only happens on Weibo because of its openness and its ability to disseminate information very quickly, right? So back to my little story about the Beijing Airport Express. So we ended up pitching kind of like, you know, a collection of different homegrown celebrities as spokesperson, and avoided that landmine. But this is to say, if you have enough cash to do celebrity sponsorships and actually run your campaigns on Weibo with your celebrities, because that's the only way to get attention on Weibo, sometimes you run into landmines like this. It's impossible to foresee which celebrity is going to get into trouble, right? And so with this guy, for those who can't read Chinese, This is Want to Fall in Love, the kind that makes you go to jail, right? So this became like a huge meme in China. And imagine all the brands that were signed to him, and you know the outcries for their lost investments. That was the chance they took, and basically it's a gamble that they lost. So one more, which is TikTok or Douyin. So this is actually a hard one, and I'm running out of time. So essentially, if you talk about social media, last year and this year, having a presence on Douyin is now kind of a new trendy thing. Except it's hard because there's a lot of sort of miscellaneous content on there, and video clips are limited to either 15 seconds or a minute. So even if you do product placements, it doesn't seem like there's enough time to really show off what you're trying to sell. Luckily, the new feature came about. This is actually for the download of a translation app that I screen capped. So why is this interesting? Because they were running ads on Douyin. So essentially, now the ad formats are exactly like Instagram. It's inline, and it has call to action buttons, and basically, anything you want to sell or anything you want to get people to download, you just do that. So I think this is a nice shortcut to whatever other KOL program you were thinking of running on Douyin, which I actually think is a lot more expensive. This is probably a more efficient way to go. Magic, right? So it just translates things into Chinese. Okay, so one last topic, and again, this is going back to getting recommendations. If you don't have much of a physical presence, it's not a real problem, because if you are able to start with product design and deliver a enjoyable consumer journey, then people will still recommend for you, and you can still get a lot of transactions done with very little physical presence. So this is a story of what I call 42 versus 3. So the luxury brand Tod's, everybody knows Tod's, right? I glanced at their website just this morning to check. They have 42 stores in China. And in 2015, they acquired Roger Vivier, which currently has 3 stores in China. So if you do the math, then you'd be like, well, okay, from awareness all the way down to conversion, there should be a factor of 15 between Tod's and Roger Vivier. But the truth of the matter is, blue line is Todd, blue line is Tod's, green line is Roger Vivier. You'll see that there's actually, sorry, I read it backwards. Blue line is Roger Vivier, so Chinese people call it RV, and green line is Tod's. Search volume for Roger Vivier is actually twice as much as Tod's. Right? Even though their physical presence is completely opposite. So how is this done? It's because I think Roger Vivier actually runs a very clever program in the form of using these foreign purchasers. We call them daigous. I'm sure you've run across that term. Right? So they infiltrated a whole group of daigous to get them to recommend their products. Oh, we'll buy it for you from overseas. And that has driven up a lot of buzz with Chinese women, especially when they're in the mood for luxury shoes. So this is the result. I mean, if you look at that, do you want to be running a very smart, recommendation-driven program, or do you want to be building physical stores like Tod's? All right, so this is the end, and I'm going to use my own line. 美女帅哥加我微信吧 at my WeChat, and here it is. Thank you.